Hello, today we are doing lesson 4.7. We are going to learn how to complete the square. We are going to complete the square to solve problems, and we're going to complete the square to write our equations in vertex form. In lesson 4.5, you solved equations of the form x squared equals k by square rooting both sides. This method will also work if one side of the equation is a perfect square trinomial. So for example, when we first look at this, we don't think we can get the squared term by itself because we have an x squared and an x. However, this is a perfect square trinomial, so we can actually factor this side so it looks like this, x minus 4 squared equals 25. Now we have the type of problems we've already seen. We have the squared term by itself, we can go ahead and solve. We square root both sides, we get x minus 4 on the left, and plus or minus 5 on the right. Then we go ahead and add our 4 to both sides, and we get x equals 4 plus 5, which is 9, and 4 minus 5, which is negative 1. You can also find the solutions of this equation by setting the equation equal to 0 and then factoring. So we could have subtracted 25 on both sides and then factored that expression and set each parenthesis equal to 0. Now, sometimes you need to add a term to an expression, x squared plus bx, to make it square so that we can make a perfect square trinomial. This process is what we call completing the square. When we complete the square, this is what we are going to do. We are going to add this expression to both sides. We are going to have a b term, and we're going to take that term, divide it by 2, and square it. What we add to the left, we must add to the right. So now we're going to practice finding the value that would make perfect square trinomials, and then we're going to write the expression as the square of a binomial. So this is just practice for when we are going to solve and write our equation in vertex form. So let's find what c would be. Take 14, divide it by 2, and square it. We get 7 squared, which is 49. So if you replace c with 49, this is what you get. Now it's a perfect square trinomial. So what multiplies to give us 49 and adds to give us 14, 7, and 7, this is how we write it. So I want to see c, and I want to see the perfect square trinomial factor. All right, let's do the next problem. Negative 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. You can leave these as fractions. That's what I would do, and I would just go ahead and square it, and I'll show you why. So when we square both of these terms, we get 81 over 4. I know it doesn't look that pretty, but that is our c. If we replace our c with 81 over 4, remember when we first learned how to factor perfect square trinomials, we would square root the first term and we would square root the last term. If we leave it as a fraction, we can see that these are both perfect squares. So we would write the expression as x minus 9 over 2 squared. So that's my suggestion. Go ahead and leave it as a fraction. If we were doing more solving, then that's okay. If you want to write it in a decimal, but for the part where we need to factor, it's easier to see it as a fraction. Okay, go ahead, pause the video, try the first you try on your own. Now, these are the steps that we are going to do to solve equations by completing the square. I'm going to do my work over here for number 1 so that we can follow the steps. So if we look at number 1, the first step says get the coefficient of x squared to be 1. Right now it's not. So what you need to do is you need to divide every term by 2. So when we do that, we get x squared plus 4x plus 7 equals 0. We write the left side of the equation as x squared plus bx. So I want these two terms by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 7 from both sides. So we get x squared plus 4x. And this is what I usually do here. I leave a blank. Plus a blank equals negative 7 plus a blank. You'll see why in a second. The third step is to do our b squared divided by 2 and add that to each side. So 4 divided by 2 squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. This is just like when we are getting fractions, getting a common denominator for fractions. What we do to the top, we must do to the bottom. So what we do to the left side of an equation, we must do to the right. So we're going to add 4 to the left, and we're going to add 4 to the right. Now we're going to write the left side of the equation as a binomial squared. So basically we're going to factor this perfect square trinomial. So we get x plus 2 squared, and on the right we get negative 3. And now we're going to go ahead and solve like we did the other day. We're going to square root both sides. So we get x plus 2 on the left. We get plus or minus I root 3 on the right. Then we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So my answer is x equals negative 2 plus or minus I root 3. So a little bit of a process, but It's the same every single time. Okay, let's go ahead and try the second problem. I'm going to, again, write it up here so that we can look at the steps as we do the problem. Now, right now, this isn't anything. We need to distribute. We can't even see what's going on here. So when I distribute, I get 6x squared plus 48x equals 12. I do not have x squared by itself. That's step 1. So we're going to divide the left side by 6 and the right side by 6. So we get x squared plus 8x. This is where I like to write my plus blanks. Oops, this is equals 2 plus blank. We're going to go ahead and do this. B squared divided by 2, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is 16, so we had 16 on the left, we had 16 on the right. We're going to go ahead and factor the left, so we get x plus 4 squared. The right, we get 18. Square root both sides. We get x plus 4 on the left equals plus or minus 3 root 2 on the right. I knew that the reduced square root of 18 is 3 root 2. Now I subtract 4. These are not like terms, so you have to leave your answer as negative 4 plus or minus 3 root 2. This is my final answer. Now, I want you to follow these steps as you try the U-try. I think I gave you one where it already leads with the 1, so you can skip the first step. So what you need to do is you would need to add the 3 over. Then go ahead and write your left with the blanks. X squared plus 6x plus blank equals 3 plus blank. Go ahead and finish that problem. Okay, now we're going to use completing the square to put our standard form equations into vertex form. Okay, so what I did is I took the example that we see on the following page and I wrote it here so we can follow the steps. Okay, we're going to prepare to complete the square by writing our equation like this. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We are going to write y plus blank equals, we're going to put the x squared minus 10x. I'm going to put the blank here. And then we're going to write the 22 on the outside of the parentheses. We're going to complete the square within the problem. This time we're not going to get the x squared and the x term by itself. So now we're going to go ahead and complete the square. This is our b term. So we're going to do negative 10 divided by 2, and we're going to square that. Okay, so we get 25. I'm going to add 25 here and add 25 here. Now I'm going to factor this. Okay, so I get x minus 5 squared. Now, y is not by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 25 on both sides. So we get y on the left, negative 3 on the right. This is vertex form. Look how easy that is. There's no solving except the fact that you want to get y by itself. Now we can look at this and take the vertex out. The vertex is the opposite of what you see on the inside and exactly what you see on the outside. These are the two answers that I want to see. Okay, now there is one little trick to it, and we're going to see that when we do number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the page that the problem's on, but we're going to still follow these steps. Okay, number 1, we're going to set it up. Number 2, y plus blank. Now, here's a little trick here. We're going to look at these two terms, and remember, when we complete the square, our x squared term has to lead with 1, and right now it doesn't. So I'm going to write my 5 separately. Okay, so I took care of that. We're going to factor a 2 out, but we can't make it disappear because on the left we would then have y divided by 2, and we don't want that. So we're just going to factor it out. So when I factor a 2 out, I'm left with x squared plus 2x. I'm going to go ahead and write my blank. Now we're going to do the b over 2 and square it. 2 divided by 2 is 1 squared. Okay, now here's the thing. When I put 1 in on this side, we're really not adding 1 to the right side of the equation. We're adding 2 times 1. So on the left, I actually have to put a 2 here. This is as messy as it gets. Nothing will be tricky except that you might have to factor out your x squared term, your coefficient of your x squared term. Okay, so I have y plus 2 on the left. I have a 2, and then I'm going to go ahead and factor this trinomial. So we get x plus 1 squared. Now I just have to subtract 2 on both sides because I want y all by itself. So I get y equals 2 times x plus 1 squared minus 7. This is vertex form. The vertex is the opposite of what you see on the inside and exactly what you see on the outside. Okay, I'm going to help you set up the U-try, and then if you have questions, comments, or concerns, you can go ahead and write it on the bottom of the paper, and then I'll see you tomorrow. But if you need a little help, here's your hint. Set it up like this. Oops. This is an x squared. Okay, Go ahead, try this, you try, and like I said, questions, comments, or concerns right at the bottom of the paper, and I'll see you